In this video, we will be looking at how to use the Super 530D semi-active radar homing missile when in the Mirage 2000C. We will go over the theory of such a weapon and its various parameters, how to prepare the missile for delivery and the various options you can select, how to achieve the required radar lock for firing, some important pieces of HUD symbology, and the use of the Super 530D Pointe mode. Hello fellow virtual aviators, we are back in the remarkably venatorial Mirage 2000C, and today we are looking at the use of our second air-to-air weapon, the Super 530D missile, the keystone of the Mirage's interception capabilities. The Super 530D is a pretty effective weapon once you know how to use it, and together with the Magic 2 missile abilities we learned in our previous tutorial, we are well on our way to becoming an effective hunter. Morning has broken over the Giza Plateau, casting down benign light over the beautiful and ancient pyramidal tombs of Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaura. However, in the distance over Sinai, there are a couple of enemy fighters intruding over Egyptian airspace, and we are going to employ Super 530D missiles against them. If you are familiar with how the Super 530D works, please feel free to skip the next section, but first, a short presentation on some important concepts. In this briefing, we are looking at the Matra Super 530D missile. The Super 530D is the primary offensive air-to-air weapon of the Mirage 2000C. The Super 530D was introduced in 1988 and has a lineage in the R530 missile carried by predecessors the Mirage 3 and Mirage F1. It is a short to medium range missile and is usually employed beyond visual range, although it can be employed at closer ranges if required. The Super 530D is a semi-active radar homing missile. Its NATO brevity code is therefore FOX-1. As we have learned in our previous briefing, French military doctrine has largely favoured its native products rather than purchasing similar weapons from allies. In this sense, the Super 530D is France's cognate to the AIM-7 Sparrow, as used by other Western air forces. In development terms, the Super 530D is similar to the Echo and Foxtrot variants of the Sparrow. It is a highly manoeuvrable, supersonic interception missile. The Mirage 2000C can only carry two Super 530D missiles on its inboard wing hardpoints. This, in my opinion, is one of the few limitations of the Mirage. Standard doctrine is to combine these two with two Magic 2 missiles for self-defense. Due to the nature of the Super 530D's interaction with the Mirage's weapon systems, if these are equipped, air-to-ground ordnance cannot be loaded in addition. You can, however, equip a centerline external fuel tank with the Super 530Ds. The Super 530Ds interact with the Mirage 2000C's RDI radar. A target is searched for using the radar before being placed into a PSIC single-target track. Super 530Ds are lock-on before launch weapons, and cannot be fired without a PSIC lock on the target. Typically, dependent on various conditions, the maximum range of a Super 530D is 20 to 25 nautical miles. However, the effectiveness of the missile increases at a slightly shorter range. With a PSIC lock achieved, and within the maximum range of the missile, the Super 530D can then be launched. Even with a nominal maximum range of 25 nautical miles, you will have far more success if you launch your Super 530Ds at a range of about 10 to 15 miles. The Super 530D is a semi-active radar homing missile, as we have already learned. As the Mirage 2000C's radar illuminates the target, radiation is reflected, which is detected by the missile. This allows the missile to gauge where the target is and make adjustments to its trajectory to guide itself towards the target. In this situation of semi-active radar, your aircraft becomes the emitter and the missile becomes the receiver. During the Super 530D's time of flight, you must keep the target illuminated in a radar lock so that radiation is constantly reflected to provide the missile with information. This means that your own evasive manoeuvres are limited. You cannot simply turn away from the target to escape. Even if the target performs evasive manoeuvres, your Super 530D will continue to guide itself towards it so long as an effective radar lock is maintained by your aircraft. There are instances where a PSIC lock can be temporarily lost and regained, and it is still possible for the missile to score a hit. However, you will have far more success with a constant radar lock. Losing a PSIC lock will return your Mirage into Resh range-while bar search mode. If you are unable to re-establish a PSIC lock on your target while it manoeuvres, your Super 530D will no longer track and will be defeated. Of course, despite their superior tracking and range, there are also disadvantages with using radar-based weaponry compared with infrared homing missiles such as the Magic II, which do not necessarily require it. If your target is equipped with a radar warning receiver, they may be able to detect you beyond visual range, even when in Resh bar search mode, as a symbol representing the strength of your radar will be displayed on the screen. Most RWRs can distinguish between search and lock. When you enter PSIC single target track, the RWR may detect this and inform the target with a different symbol on its screen. Likewise, many RWRs can detect when an aircraft is guiding or supporting a missile and will warn the enemy pilot to take action, evasive or otherwise. You must therefore learn how and when to employ your radar when using weapons of this type. Thank you for listening. Now let's see how the Super 530D missile is employed in our esteemed Mirage 2000C. Okay, so we have been directed east by our controller, and we are looking for 2 intruder MiG-21 fish beds, against which we'll be employing our Super 530Ds. So first things first, I need to select them. With the C and M switch on the HOTAS in the neutral position, I simply press the button beneath 530 on the PCA panel. And this will place me straight into air-to-air mode as appropriate. With the missile selected, we should see 530 flashing on the heads-up display. In terms of other HUD symbology changes, it is actually very similar to when we employed the Magic IIs. G and D, standing for gauche and droite, left and right, are displayed at the bottom, indicating we have Super 530Ds loaded on both sides of our aircraft. And we also have an accelerometer, so we can monitor our G loading during combat maneuvers. The only real difference between this and the Magic II symbology is that the airspeed and altitude information have remained at the top. And this is because the 530D is not really a dogfighting missile, so I don't necessarily need a clearer view at the top of the hood for use in the turn. We first prepare some delivery parameters for our missiles on the PPA panel. With the Super 530Ds equipped, we should see MIS, MISS, standing for missile, on this the 530D standby button. Again, this verifies that Mirage's weapons control systems are correctly interacting with the missiles. We should verify that a P, standing for Pret or Ready, is also displayed on the button. Whilst the 530Ds do not need to be cooled like the Magic IIs, they must be interfaced with the Mirage's radar and their avionics, gyros and servos powered up for use. The missile preparation automatically starts after engine startup and usually takes about 45 seconds. The prep sequence can be rerun by pressing the button to extinguish the P and then pressing the button again. The P will flash, indicating that the prep sequence is taking place, and will be steady when it is complete. Also on the PPA panel we have the missile selector switch, and this works in the same fashion as the Magic 2s. We can prioritize either the left or right missile to fire, or leave the switch in automatic to allow the Mirage to select which is the best missile to fire based on various calculations. This switch here is the firing mode selector switch, and as you can see from the label, this applies to the cannon, the rockets, and the Super 530Ds. With TOT, which stands for total selected, both 530Ds will fire as a salvo, 2 seconds behind one another, so long as the trigger is depressed throughout the whole launch sequence. The alternative, PAR, P-A-R, which stands for partial, will only ever fire one Super 530D with every trigger press. The final switch pertaining to the Super 530Ds on the PPA is this, the rather interesting 530D Fire Selector switch. With AUT, AUT, standing for automatic selected, pulling and holding the trigger does not necessarily fire the missile immediately, but your weapon systems will wait to fire until conditions provide a good probability of kill. In this sense, the trigger is acting as a consent to release switch. With the light extinguished, pulling the trigger will fire the missile immediately, regardless of conditions. As usual, when we enter the combat zone, we need to fence in by switching the master arm switch to the arm position. In doing so, we should see that 530 on the hood is no longer flashing, but is steady. And we both have an S and a P beneath 530 on the PCA panel, S standing for selected, and P standing for prêt or ready. In selecting the 530Ds, we should also see that an S selection light has automatically illuminated beneath RDO on the PCA. This stands for Ralliement Designation d'Objectif, or radar target designation, selecting an air-to-air submode where targets are chosen and marked by the radar. So let's see if we can find a target on the VTB. We'll manipulate our radar, and hopefully we'll find a track just ahead of us. As if by magic, there it is. Let's designate that target and put him into a PSID track while scan. The radar is flashing PSIC, imploring me to change to PSIC, but I am going to leave it in PSID for the time being. HUD symbology with a PSID or PSIC lock on your radar is similar to what we have seen in our previous video. We have our target designator square marking the position of the targeted aircraft. The number here tells me the calculated aspect of the target in degrees. So if we think of a clock face, 12 o'clock or 0 degrees would tell me the target is flying cold away from me. 6 o'clock or 180 degrees would tell me the target is travelling hot straight towards me, and each value between can be interpolated to a direction. This number is the calculated closure rate in combined knots. When this number is positive, we are closing, and when negative, we are separating. And here we can see a closure speed of 1,138 knots, which is significant. This is the range scale, and this caret shows the range to the target in nautical miles. As before, this axis will adjust its scale to suit the situation. These three lines relate to the Super 530D's effective range and employment zone. The upper small line shows the maximum effective range of the 530D should the target make no evasive manoeuvres and continue to travel at its current heading and speed. The larger line shows the maximum range of the 530D should the target make evasive manoeuvres, and ideally you want to fire your missile when the range of the target is below this. The lower small line shows the minimum range, and the missile must be fired before closing on this distance to give the missile enough time to arm itself and maneuver. These steering cues, the interception director circle and director point, will guide us to an effective employment zone by maneuvering in such a way as to place the point at the center of the circle. The Super 530D has 45 seconds worth of battery life, and so this is the maximum time it can remain guided in the air. The 45s above the G and D represent the time of flight of the missile to the target if they are launched now. So I have the target in a PSID track while scan. I need a PSIC single target track in order to fire the missile, but I won't apply this until I am much closer. And this is to not give away to the enemy pilot that I'm locking him, as in PSID track while scan I will just appear as a symbol on his radar warning receiver. In other words, he knows I'm out there, but he won't gain a notification of a radar spike. The interception director point is in the center of the director circle, so I'm moving into a position that is advantageous for weapon employment. My time of flight to target has started to decrease from 45 seconds, and I'm just about to come into maximum range. The director circle has doubled to tell me this. It is at about this point I'm going to switch over to a PSIC single target track lock with the PSIC button. Both missiles have a PSIC lock as both G and D are circled, and I have the tone. I now have the shoot cue, TIR, standing for tirer, the French word for shoot, and this has appeared when I'm within no escape range. I can also hear that the lock tone has changed to give me an audible shoot cue, two alternating and repeating tones telling me that I am at a good range to fire. Reiver Fox 1. Upon firing the missile, we enter a sub-mode known as Super 530D PSIC mode. This is indicated by the left or right missile letter indicator disappearing, and the number on that side now represents the time until impact as calculated by the Mirage. Remember, I need to maintain a single target track on the target, so I cannot just turn away. I must generally point in the right direction. The flashing circle indicates that he is performing evasive manoeuvres. I just see the missile creeping up on him. Splash 1. After an engagement like the one just shown, you will often find that your radar antenna is out of position as it has followed the target during its evasive manoeuvres. So looking at the VTB, I can see the antenna is pointing down, so I recommend you take just a few seconds to realign your radar using the usual switches from the radar control panel. In this next example, I have preset the alidade to place a designated target straight into a PSIC single target track using the STT PSIC button, as we learned in our video on air-to-air radar use. This is indicated by PIC pick on the VTB, and this will bypass PSID track while scan, so I won't need to manually switch over to the PSIC before shooting. There's our target on the VTB, so let's designate him, and we should find it goes straight into PSIC and we'll get the tone from the missile. I'm still out of range, I'm about 30 nautical miles away from him, so let's manoeuvre towards him. And we're in range. Let's get a little bit closer. He's coming straight towards me, 180 degrees. And we're in range, no escape. Have our shoot cue. Fox 1. Reverse splash 1 times fish head. In this next example, we'll change the launch parameters on the PPA, selecting total for a salvo launch and automatic to use a consent to fire approach. I have placed my target into a PSID track while scan. The Super 530D's ranging and employment zone information is also displayed on the VTB, just as it is on the HUD's range scale, the same 3 lines representing the same 3 concepts. As we know, Super 530Ds require a PSIC single target track in order to launch. If you forget to switch to PSIC before pressing the trigger, the Mirage will realise that you wish to launch and will automatically change to PSIC before releasing the missiles. The result of this is that it just takes slightly longer for the missiles to fire as it changes over. Also note that even in the best conditions, it still takes a split second from depressing the trigger for the Super 530Ds to leave the pylons. This is because information must be fed into the missiles prior to launch. With the launch parameters set as I have, I am going to press and hold the trigger when in range, and this will cause 3 things to happen. A switch to PSIC, the Mirage will wait for the right conditions to fire, and a salvo of 2 missiles will be released. So I'm in range, press and hold the trigger, switch to PSIC, conditions are good, and by holding the trigger, I've sent off the salvo of 2. Through evasive manoeuvres such as notching, it is possible for the target to break the lock, rendering the Super 530D unguided. Now, it is possible to recover your radar lock using one of 2 features, through the RDI radar's memory feature or by the Super 530D Pointe mode. To simulate the breaking of a lock, I am going to fire a missile at the target and then turn away from it. The flashing director circle indicates that the target is reaching the gimbal limits of the radar, and the capital M indicates that we have entered memory mode. This means that the lock has been lost, but the radar is illuminating the last known trajectory of the target and will try to reacquire it automatically. This process will last for 8 seconds. Often, manoeuvring back towards the target is enough to reacquire the lock and exit memory mode. After 8 seconds, if the target has not been reacquired, we enter forced illumination mode, indicated by ILU on the HUD. Like memory mode, this will show the last known trajectory on the HUD of the target. The difference being is that the radar will not attempt to relock the target. The time of flight indicator is now surrounded by a box, indicating that this is now displaying the time until the missile self-destructs. When in forced illumination mode, we can opt to change to Super 530D Pointe mode. This slaves the radar to the bore sight of the aircraft. Pointe mode is accessed by pressing Weapons System Command forward when ILU is showing on the HUD, and a bore sight circle will appear. If we can steer the target into the circle before the missile self-destructs, it is possible for Super 530D, which has lost its track, to regain it and score a hit. To simulate this, we will launch a missile and immediately enter Pointe mode. OK, pressing Weapons System Command forward has entered Pointe mode. I can see the circle, and I need to steer the target into the circle so I can see him in the distance there. I've got 35 seconds left of battery life, so hopefully the missile will pick up the target and strike a hit. Champion. Well, as ever, I hope that was useful for you and that you have learned a thing or two about the Super 530D. It's a cool missile and I hope you have fun using it. With extreme gratitude to my patrons, the indefatigable Yan11 and the awesome Lakota21. Feel free to do the usual thing, like, subscribe, comment and share, but until next time, virtual aviators, I look forward to seeing you online in the skies. This is Reiver saying, last call.